You are not ready for what's about to hit this country. Don't take my word for it. Just follow the data. Over 84 million jobs are on track to disappear by 2025 due to automation and AI. The US dollar share of global reserves has dropped to its lowest level in history, just 58%, and it's falling fast. American credit card debt just crossed $1.13 trillion, the highest ever recorded. And 61% of Americans say they're living paycheck to paycheck, with zero margin for error. But this isn't just about inflation or layoffs. It's about a silent, multi-system breakdown in supply chains, trust, food, energy, labor, currency, and civil order, all happening at once. And while the news keeps spinning distractions, the real signals are screaming right beneath the surface. This isn't the beginning of a storm. This is impact. And if you're not preparing now, by the time it's obvious, it's already too late. Let's break it down. The hidden collapse of American infrastructure is quietly strangling the economy. Nobody's talking about it until the bridge collapses or the water turns brown. But the next American failure won't be sudden. It'll be slow, boring, and invisible, until it's irreversible. Right now, over 43% of the country's roads are in poor or mediocre condition, according to the latest report from the American Society of Civil Engineers. That's not a few potholes. That's almost half the pavement under your tires turning into a liability. Meanwhile, over 46,000 bridges in the U.S. are structurally deficient, meaning they're either cracked, corroding, or literally being held up with temporary supports. And the average bridge is now over 44 years old, dangerously close to the end of its engineered lifespan. Think about that. Bridges that were built when gas was 60 cents a gallon are still carrying semi-trucks weighing 40 tons. And while Congress points fingers and local agencies juggle duct tape and prayer, deferred maintenance adds $125 billion a year in hidden costs, higher vehicle repairs, longer shipping times, and fuel waste. That directly hits you. Every supply chain slowdown, every late package, every price increase caused by a trucking detour, it's all downstream from collapsing infrastructure. The World Economic Forum ranks U.S. infrastructure 13th globally now, below countries like Spain and the UAE, and slipping each year. Water systems aren't faring any better. Over 2,000 water systems in the U.S. still contain lead pipes as of 2025, exposing over 10 million households to potential contamination. Even worse, the EPA estimates that we lose over 6 billion gallons of treated drinking water every single day to leaky pipes. That's 2.1 trillion gallons a year, enough to supply the state of California for months. Power grids? They were never designed to handle electric vehicles, smart homes, and heat waves topping 115 degrees. That's why rolling blackouts in places like Texas, Arizona, and parts of California are becoming the norm, not the exception. But here's the part that nobody wants to admit. Every single one of these systems depends on the others. When one goes down, it cascades. Power outage? Now you can't pump water. Bridge failure? Now trucks reroute, shipments delay, grocery shelves thin. It's all connected. And Americans are depending on systems built in the 1950s to hold up a 2025 economy. If that doesn't terrify you, it should. Because America isn't just behind the curve. It's built on borrowed time, and that bill is coming due. The great retirement wave is gutting the workforce, and nobody's replacing them. We are quietly losing the most experienced, most essential workers in the American economy, and they're not coming back. Nearly 10,000 baby boomers hit retirement age every single day. That's over 3.6 million workers a year exiting the workforce, taking decades of institutional knowledge with them. Now here's the part the headlines don't mention. 1/3 of all skilled tradespeople in America are already over 55. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs, machine operators, mechanics. These aren't jobs you can fill with a quick YouTube tutorial or a newly minted graduate with a laptop. These are high-stakes, hands-on, precision roles, and they're being vacated at a rate we have never seen before. The National Association of Home Builders says we're short over 600,000 construction workers right now. Not in 2026. Today. Hospitals are down nearly 200,000 nurses due to burnout and retirement. And the trucking industry? The American Trucking Association says we need over 80,000 new drivers just to stay afloat. Not grow, just tread water. But the real kicker is in manufacturing. Since 2020, U.S. factories have added 830,000 jobs, thanks to reshoring, tariffs, and domestic investment. But nearly 2.1 million jobs could go unfilled by 2030 simply because there aren't enough trained people to do them. And automation? It helps, but it doesn't wire your house, drive your delivery truck, or do open-heart surgery. AI won't replace the guy who knows how to fix a collapsed sewer line in winter. We're watching an economic artery clog in real time and pretending it's not happening. College enrollment in skilled trades is down. Vocational programs are closing, and employers are already paying the price, offering $50,000 signing bonuses for nurses, 38-hour to apprentice welders, and still not filling roles. Even the military is short. The Army missed its recruiting target by 15,000 soldiers last year, the worst shortfall since the Vietnam era. Here's what that means to you. Every delay, every wait time, every "we're understaffed" sign at the pharmacy, every week your furnace repair is backlogged, every product that costs 30% more because it sat in a warehouse with nobody to move it, that's the labor gap in action. The boomers are leaving, and Gen Z, they're not stepping in. We're building an economy without the hands to hold it up. America isn't just understaffed, it's bleeding talent, and nobody's coming to stop the hemorrhage. The silent credit crisis is already here, and it's starting with you. You probably haven't heard this one on the evening news, but the credit system that underpins the American lifestyle is already fraying. And it's starting exactly where it hurts the most, the household. Let's start with the basics. U.S. credit card debt just passed $113 trillion, the highest ever recorded. That's not spread evenly either. 57% of Americans carry a balance month to month, and nearly half of Gen Z adults are using buy now, pay later services for groceries. That's not budgeting, that's desperation. And now the Fed's rate hikes are slamming the brakes. The average credit card interest rate in 2025? It's over 22.8%, the highest since tracking began, meaning every $1,000 in carried debt costs you nearly $230 a year just in interest. But that's not the worst part. Subprime auto loans are defaulting at levels not seen since 2009. According to Cox Automotive, over 6.1% of borrowers are now 60 days past due on their car notes. And repossessions? They're up 26% year over year. In some states like Nevada and Louisiana, they're doubling. That's not a fluke. It's a sign. Americans are being priced out of the very mobility they need to work and earn. And here's where it gets ugly. Small regional banks are holding the bag. As big banks tighten lending criteria and push risk off their books, regional banks are stuck with rising defaults in consumer loans, auto portfolios, and small business credit. Meanwhile, over $270 billion in commercial real estate loans come due in the next 18 months, and vacancy rates in U.S. office buildings are hitting 19.6%, an all-time high. Empty buildings don't generate income, which means those loans are souring, which means those banks tighten even more. What happens next? Credit dries up. Small businesses can't get operating capital. Consumers can't refinance. Families can't consolidate debt. One shock, like a natural disaster, a market correction, or a government shutdown, and that web snaps. Credit isn't just about buying TVs and couches. It's how most Americans survive job loss, medical bills, or car repairs. When that safety net tears, the impact is immediate. Households buckle, businesses fail, recovery slows, and the worst part? Most people won't realize the credit crunch has arrived until they go to swipe, and the bank says no. That's how it begins. Quietly, personally, and everywhere, all at once. The collapse of trust is quietly fracturing. Every American system. Americans don't trust anything anymore. Not the government, not corporations, not even each other. According to the latest Pew Research poll, only 16% of Americans say they trust the federal government to do the right thing most of the time. That's the lowest level in nearly 70 years of tracking. But it doesn't stop there. 74% of Americans believe elected officials don't care what ordinary people think, and 66% say most politicians are corrupt. Now let that sit for a second. 2/3 of the population believe the system is rigged, and those are just the ones admitting it. The same collapse is happening in news media. Trust in traditional outlets like CNN, Fox, and MSNBC has fallen to 34%, down from over 55% just a decade ago. Even local news, once the bedrock of community information, has shrunk to a shell of itself, with over 2,500 U.S. newspapers shuttering since 2005. And as information gets replaced with algorithmic noise, Americans are building echo chambers that only harden their distrust. Here's where it gets dangerous. The foundation of any functioning society is cooperation. When people stop trusting institutions, they stop following rules, stop showing up, stop believing in shared goals. And that's exactly what's happening. Vaccine skepticism, tax resistance, jury nullification, school board protests, public health boycotts, it's all part of the same unraveling. And the cracks go even deeper in everyday life. Surveys show that over 60% of Americans say they feel isolated or disconnected from their community. And 1 in 4 say they don't have even one close friend. That's not just sad, it's lethal. Loneliness now carries the same health risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to the U.S. Surgeon General. You combine that with distrust of the health system, and you get spiraling chronic illness, mental health collapse, and disengagement from even basic wellness routines. And politically? Forget it. Over 50% of voters in the 2024 election said they didn't believe their vote would be counted accurately. That's not just polarization, that's institutional decay. If people don't believe the game is fair, they stop playing by the rules. And history shows us, again and again, that when trust breaks down, societies don't implode overnight. They slowly grind to a halt, systems jam, decisions stall, progress reverses, and sooner or later, someone comes in with a solution that demands total obedience in exchange for stability. You don't want to be caught in that offer, not when your voice still counts. Energy grid failure is closer than you think, and no one's preparing for it. You can have all the money in the world, but when the lights go out, none of it matters. What's terrifying about the U.S. power grid right now isn't just that it's overloaded, it's that it was never built for this. Right now, the U.S. energy grid is being pushed harder than at any time in its history. According to the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, 2/3 of the U.S. population faces a high risk of blackouts in summer or winter extremes. That includes places like Texas, the Midwest, and California. Why? Because the grid was built for the 20th century, not the one we're in now. Over 70% of transmission lines in the U.S. are more than 30 years old, and they weren't designed to handle the loads that are now being shoved through them daily. Think about what your household uses today. An EV charger, 5 smart appliances, 2 or 3 working-from-home laptops, a freezer full of food, a high-efficiency HVAC system. Now multiply that by 143 million households. The math just doesn't work. And here's the curveball. Clean energy, while essential, adds a new strain. Solar and wind are intermittent by nature, and battery storage is still limited. That means without massive new grid investments, we're plugging futuristic energy sources into an ancient infrastructure. NERC has already issued emergency warnings in places like the Pacific Northwest and the Upper Midwest for winter capacity shortfalls. And ERCOT, which manages the Texas grid, has warned multiple times in 2025 that demand could outpace generation during heat waves or freeze events, just like we saw during Winter Storm Uri in 2021, when 246 people died from grid failure. And yet, despite the warnings, the U.S. is lagging behind. China is building one ultra-high voltage power line every 500 miles. The U.S., just one national-scale project in the last decade. No redundancy, no modern backups, and no urgency. One cyber attack, one overloaded transformer, or one weather event, and an entire city can go dark. And if you think a blackout just means no lights, think again. It means no heat in winter, no gas pumps, no ATMs, no supply chain deliveries. Even the water system fails, because pumps run on power. When the grid fails, society doesn't just slow down, it stops. Are you ready to live for 72 hours without electricity? Most households aren't. Most hospitals barely are. And the time to prepare isn't when the lights flicker. It's before. The rise of AI is not replacing jobs. It's deleting whole career paths. Forget everything you've been told about robots coming for blue-collar jobs first. The truth is, AI is coming for everyone. White-collar, creative, technical, even government workers. And it's not happening someday. It's happening now. According to a 2025 report by the World Economic Forum, 84 million jobs globally are expected to disappear by 2028 due to automation and AI, with the United States expected to take one of the hardest hits. But here's what they don't tell you. The jobs replacing them aren't comparable. The new roles require entirely different skills, certifications, and experience, and they're not being filled by the people being displaced. Right now, OpenAI's GPT-5 and Google's Gemini are being integrated into everything from customer support and legal drafting to radiology screening and software testing. One firm in Boston just laid off 90% of its support staff, replacing them with a chatbot that handles 12,000 tickets a week. Another media company eliminated its entire content department and now generates daily articles and product descriptions through AI with human oversight from a single editor. That's not workforce evolution. That's job decimation. Freelancers, creatives, designers, accountants, and even entry-level engineers are watching offers dry up and pay shrink, while companies increase productivity and cut costs by plugging in algorithms that don't need lunch breaks or health insurance. And the worst part? The workers being displaced don't even realize it until it's too late. Job listings disappear quietly. HR emails go unanswered. Career paths evaporate like mist. Even the recruiting process is now AI-driven, screening resumes through pattern-matching software that rejects perfectly qualified applicants in seconds. The result? Massive underemployment, credential inflation, and emotional burnout. People are working 3 part-time gigs to scrape together what used to be a single full-time income, and no one's training them for what comes next. Federal programs are slow, private sector retraining is mostly PR, and schools are still teaching 2015 skills for a 2026 job market. This isn't about being anti-technology. It's about acknowledging that automation is no longer a future threat. It's the present landscape. The American middle class was built on stable, well-paying careers. But AI doesn't replace people. It replaces ladders. And without ladders, people don't climb. They fall. So the question is, what's your backup plan? America's food system is built on a razor's edge, and it's already starting to slip. You might think food security means making sure the shelves stay full. But in America, what we call food security is actually a high-stakes balancing act involving diesel fuel, imported fertilizer, a collapsing farm economy, and distribution centers running on borrowed time. Let me walk you through this. Right now, 53% of all fruits and 32% of vegetables sold in the United States are imported. That means if a port shuts down, a war escalates, or a currency crisis hits a major producer like Mexico, Brazil, or Chile, we're done. You don't get a second chance to move produce when the shelf life is 4 days. Meanwhile, over 200 million acres of farmland in the U.S. are locked into monoculture cash crops like corn, soy, and wheat. And while those crops help with fuel, feed, and processed food, they don't grow tomatoes, onions, or spinach. So your local food system? It's not local, it's global, and that's the problem. Fertilizer prices, for example, shot up over 80% between 2021 and 2023 due to sanctions on Russian exports and disruptions in phosphate supply from China and Morocco. Prices have come down slightly in 2025, but not before thousands of small farms across the Midwest shuttered operations, unable to recover from 2 years of margin losses. And the big farms that survived? They're automating, replacing people with GPS tractors and AI-powered harvesters. That might sound efficient, but it also means fewer people know how to farm, repair, or even plant by hand. When the system breaks, there's no one left to fill the gap. And here's the real kicker. Food processors and retailers are running leaner than ever. Just-in-time inventory systems mean most grocery stores carry 3 days' worth of food at best. If diesel supply gets tight, again, Or a cyber attack hits logistics software. Again, the whole thing backs up instantly. You saw this during COVID. You're going to see it again. And don't forget climate shocks. The 2024-2025 drought cycle hammered the Midwest, cutting corn and wheat yields by 18% in some counties, according to USDA data. California's Central Valley, which grows a third of the nation's produce, is now dealing with record-high water costs and another legal fight over groundwater pumping. When you zoom out, the truth is clear. America is not food secure. It is food convenient, until the chain breaks. And then you find out just how fast bare shelves appear. Are you stocked for that? The housing market is becoming a permanent trap, not a path to wealth. You've probably been told all your life that homeownership is the foundation of the American dream. But in 2025, that dream has mutated into something more like a trap. And most people haven't realized they've walked straight into it. Let's look at the data. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate this fall sits at 7.23%, nearly double what it was just a few years ago. The result? Monthly payments have exploded. In 2020, the average American family could afford a $340,000 home with a $1,200 monthly mortgage. Today, that same family, at the same income level, can barely afford a $220,000 home. But the problem is, those don't exist. Inventory for homes under $300K has dropped by 43% nationwide. Starter homes are gone, and landlords, they know it. Rent prices are up 31% nationally since 2021, with some cities seeing spikes of over 50%. In places like Austin, Tampa, and Phoenix, middle-class families are being priced out entirely, not just of ownership, but of renting. And what's worse, institutional investors are swooping in. Companies like Blackstone, Invitation Homes, and hundreds of smaller REITs are snapping up 1 in every 7 homes in major metros. They don't flip them. They don't live in them. They rent them back to you at 40% higher prices. You thought the American dream was owning a home? For Wall Street, the dream is you never do. And don't forget student loan repayments resumed this year, with over 29 million borrowers now required to restart payments just as inflation has squeezed every household category. That means younger Americans, the ones who should be buying first homes, are now sinking back into debt. Add in insurance premiums skyrocketing from natural disasters, with some policies jumping 50% in a single year, and many families are now one leak, one fire, one storm away from foreclosure. But here's the part that really stings. Even if you bought your house before all this, you may now be trapped in it. Can't refinance, can't afford to move, can't afford to rent. And that is the death of mobility, which is also the death of opportunity. Because when Americans can't move for jobs, education, or safety, the economy itself slows down. Home ownership? It's not freedom anymore. It's an anchor. And the current is rising. The breakdown of civil order is quietly accelerating in every major city. This one isn't theoretical anymore. This one's already knocking on the window of your local pharmacy, grocery store, or subway station. Civil order in America's major cities is not just eroding, it's fragmenting. And the data says so. In 2024 alone, retail theft surged 23%, according to the National Retail Federation. Major chains like Walgreens, Target, and Nordstrom are closing stores not because they're unprofitable, but because theft has made certain locations unmanageable. You're not imagining it. You walk into a drugstore and see shampoo locked behind glass, bread, deodorant, baby formula. What does that say about where we are? But that's just the surface. Violent crime, while down from its pandemic peak, has not returned to pre-2019 levels. In fact, some categories like carjackings, flash mob robberies, and assault on transit workers are way up. And in cities like San Francisco, Portland, Philadelphia, and Chicago, public officials are quietly admitting that basic policing, emergency response, and judicial processing are overwhelmed. And here's where it goes from uncomfortable to dangerous. Americans are beginning to take matters into their own hands. Armed security contractors are being hired by private neighborhoods. Businesses are deploying AI-based surveillance and facial recognition tech to monitor foot traffic, because they can't rely on response times. In 2025, Private security is a $69 billion industry, growing faster than public law enforcement. When you outsource public safety, you create inequality in protection. The rich get private patrols. The rest get delayed 911 calls. And it doesn't stop at crime. Tent encampments in cities like Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Denver have tripled in size over the last 24 months. Over 653,000 Americans are now homeless, the highest number since records began, with tens of thousands now living in their vehicles. That isn't a housing crisis. That's a humanitarian collapse. And it's happening side by side with tech billionaires building walled neighborhoods and $1.5 million doomsday bunkers. What does that tell you about their expectations? Civil order isn't just about crime stats. It's about predictability, trust, and the ability to live without constant fear. When that's gone, when you feel like help won't come, justice won't happen, or laws only. Apply sometimes, you live in a failed system. And the scariest part? You may already be adjusting to it without realizing it. Locking everything down, avoiding certain areas, skipping public transit. That's not just caution. That's adaptation. And that means the fracture is already here. The American dollar is losing its grip on the world. And most people have no idea what that really means. If you felt like something is off in the economy, if you felt that prices shouldn't be this high, debt shouldn't be this heavy, and instability shouldn't be this constant, you're not imagining it. You're feeling the early tremors of something far bigger, the slow, quiet weakening of the US dollar's global dominance. And let me tell you straight, America is not ready for what happens when the world no longer treats our dollar like the sun everything else orbits around. Because right now, the rest of the world is realigning, reorganizing, and rethinking who they trust, who they trade with, and what currency they want to be chained to. And for the first time since the 1940s, the US dollar is not the automatic answer. In 2000, the dollar accounted for 72% of global foreign exchange reserves. Today, it's down to just 58%, the lowest level in modern history. That's not a blip. That's a structural decline. And while 58% might still sound like a lot, the direction is what matters, because every percentage point lost is a seismic shift in global power. Look at what's happening right now. China, Russia, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE are expanding BRICS trade in local currencies. Over 40 countries have expressed interest in joining the bloc or partnering with it. Central banks around the world bought 1,037 metric tons of gold in 2024, the second highest amount ever recorded, because they're preparing for a world where the dollar isn't the ultimate safe haven. Even France and Japan, long-standing US allies, have begun settling select energy trades without using the dollar. That hasn't happened in 50 years. Here's why this matters for you. When global demand for dollars drops, all the benefits Americans don't even realize they've been enjoying begin to evaporate. Our imports get more expensive. Our borrowing gets more expensive. Our military gets more expensive. And worst of all, our inflation becomes harder to control because the world isn't required to buy our debt to keep our currency stable. You don't get the privilege of printing money forever when the world decides it doesn't need your money anymore. You think groceries are high now? You think housing is out of reach now? Imagine those same prices without the global subsidy the dollar has provided for 80 years. Imagine paying what Europeans pay for fuel, what Argentinians pay for beef, what Australians pay for utilities. Because that's the path we're heading toward if the dollar keeps slipping, and nobody in Washington has a plan B. This shift doesn't require a dramatic collapse. It only requires momentum. A few major nations choosing alternatives, a few trade routes bypassing the US financial system, a few deals settled in yuan or rupees instead of dollars. Once the trend starts, and it has, the decline accelerates on its own. Most Americans aren't watching foreign reserve charts or energy settlement tables. They're watching the checkout line, the rent invoice, the credit card bill. And they don't realize that what's squeezing them is the early phase of a global power shift where the dollar isn't king anymore. This isn't fear-mongering, it's mathematics, it's history. Every world-leading currency falls eventually. The British pound ruled for a century before losing dominance. The Dutch guilder ruled before that. The Spanish real before that. Currencies rise and fall with empires. And the warning signs are always the same: overspending, overextension, internal division, and lost trust abroad. Sound familiar? If the dollar continues to weaken, the American lifestyle, high consumption, low prices, endless imports, constant borrowing, will become impossible to sustain. And when that shift happens, it won't be gradual. It will hit households like a hammer. This is why preparedness matters. Not because you're expecting doomsday, but because the next era in America will be defined by economic pressure like most people alive today have never experienced. The world is changing, fast, and America isn't ready.